Like he just loaded a gun with genius and just shot the pages with it.
Better than food, man.
What kind of poor, lonely bastard reads in a casino? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent, just another patriotic citizen like yourself. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. Eventually. I'm just over here preparing for the end. Thank you. This is for one of my kind patrons over in Dublin, Sam. Thanks a bunch, Sam. Really appreciate it. Hope you're staying safe, man. We were talking about Hunter S. Thompson not too long ago, and I realized I'd never read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This was one of those masterpieces that I knew I was going to love. I had like a 90% feeling right out the gate. I grew up watching the Terry Gilliam adaptation with Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro and Gary Busey. It was like on the road for me. I knew I was going to get to it. And it was going to be great. And it was. It was like fucking amazing. So today is Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, a savage journey to the heart of the American dream. If there is a problem with the book, it's that it's so quotable. Same with the film, and which does a terrific job at adapting it. I mean, like amazing. I mean, this book is fucking incredible. And now that I've read the things I have, stuff like Hemingway and Faulkner, influences on Thompson, I really feel like I can appreciate the ferocity of Thompson's prose. Fucking leaping off the page. Like he just loaded a gun with genius and just shot the pages with it. Its lucidity crashes through the drug-addled, almost occasionally stream of consciousness text, like moments of brilliance during a heavy LSD trip, something I've never experienced. I only did acid once, and it was a very sweaty and nervous experience. I was in public too. That was a terrible idea. But if you're not interested in drugs, of course, is that all it is? Maybe the big question, the big criticism that might arise. Is it just a couple of guys on drugs? No. It's their search for the American dream, and the subsequent discovery that it's totally fucked, and that it doesn't exist any longer, if it ever did in the first place. In the heart of one of the strangest goddamn places that ever existed in history, Las Vegas, Nevada. A place which I had the chance to visit recently and lose $20. It was a smoky, sticky, disappointing adventure. Hunter S. Thompson was an American author, arguably one of the best in history, and a journalist. Thompson is responsible for the style known as gonzo journalism. According to Wikipedia, gonzo journalism is an energetic first-person participatory writing style in which the author is a protagonist, and it draws its power from a combination of social critique and self-satire. That's a great description of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Originally, it had the author on the front was Ronald Duke, the alter ego in the book, because I believe Thompson was actually afraid of losing his job for writing this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's about these two guys, Ronald Duke and Dr. Gonzo is the alias of his attorney who is writing with him. If it were just about a couple of guys doing drugs, well, that may or may not be interesting. But it's not. It's a hysterical and poignant tale about lost hope and the relentless search for individual freedom, specifically here in America, but certainly a story that I feel other cultures could relate to as well. There's actually an incredible amount of depth and humor in this thing. It reads like fiction, but a fictionalized account of a real trip to Las Vegas, where the lines between reality and fiction are blurred, warped and exaggerated to outrageous proportions. And maybe the one thing that is so important that can sell the book more than anything else, never mind that he's one of the most influential American writers, never mind the fact that he's considered one of the greatest by everybody, never mind that Cormac McCarthy said that Fear and Loathing was a classic of our time and one of the few great modern novels, never mind all that, this book is fun to read. Like really fucking fun to read. If you're charmed by Thompson at all, if you're into this type of humor, you will laugh out loud. This book is fucking hysterical. Unless there's positively nothing at all of interest to you about two men who somehow conned their way while outrageously fucked up on all kinds of drugs through one ridiculous situation after another. Unfortunately, many books are not that fun to read. At all. Even if they're good. Ain't that something? Maybe fun is the wrong word. Even many great books are boring. Or at least in part, of course. Oh well, But this one is not, ever. Like ever. This is the least boring book of all time. I mean, it is perfect. So, what actually happens though? At first, the premise is simple. Ronald Duke, a journalist, the alter ego of Thompson, is hired to cover the Mint 400, a motorcycle race out in the middle of the desert. So he and his friend slash attorney, Dr. Gonzo, based on the character Oscar Zeta Acosta, a civil rights attorney and friend of Thompson's, and totally unbelievable personality in himself, I advise you to look him up, and who later disappeared in the 70s somewhere in Mexico, never to be heard from again, round up a vast amount of drugs and head off to Las Vegas in a cherry red convertible. The Great Red Shark, he calls it, later to be traded in, I believe, for the Great White Whale, another, this time white convertible. And they just beat these cars to shit. And all of this seems to be on credit. They're not paying for any of this, and it's just a ticking time bomb. You're just wondering how long they're going to get away with it. And I mean, they just destroy the hotel rooms that they're in. They just to Dionysian doesn't even cut it. It's like they buy all this vitamin C, these grapefruits he's carrying around with him all the time. I think it's just the vitamin C and acid go well together or something like that. And so it's just like these rooms are covered in like these fucking grapefruits and shit, which his attorney's cutting up with a hunting knife, and everything is like his bed's like half burnt and shit, and then like attacking the maids and just like all these things, like just behaving very, very, very badly. It's hysterical. Also included are these amazing drawings by the illustrator Ralph Steadman. The amazing thing about Thompson is that he'll give you something outlandish and crazy, but it will be followed by something totally lucid and like sharpshooter calm, perfectly logical seeming, and he just fucks with you that way. It's hysterical. The contrast is amazing, because of course you're not expecting a guy who is actually thinking clear-headed to behave like a maniac, which he does. Acosta, or Gonzo, his lawyer, frequently prefaces his statements to Thompson as your attorney, I advise you, so as your attorney, I advise you to get a very fast car and a bunch of drugs or whatever, things your attorney should never advise you to do. You do not want to take this attorney's advice. Or maybe you do. And it all begins with that goddamn famous line that none of us who have heard it, who have grown up with the film or the book, will ever be able to forget. We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold. So, when the walls are closing in and it looks like he's about to get caught, and he's like literally like sneaking away from his hotel or making his plans to escape, I don't remember, he suddenly gets hired to go and cover a conference on drugs where there will be like 1,000 cops in attendance or something. The illogical logic being that, the last place these cops would look for drug fiends would be at a conference supposedly educating the police force on them. Predictably, it turns out to be a laughable farce. The conference, that is. What happens is hysterical. But all throughout this adventure, Duke, Thompson, is searching. Through all the excess and insanity, deliberate pushing to the very limits, and then through to some deranged level of existence which few have experienced and lived to tell the tale, I imagine, he's searching. For what? The American dream. Which is to say, maybe total freedom. Or the freedom to improve yourself and your life and your position and whatever, despite your religion, race, class, etc. But of course that doesn't exist. I don't know if it ever did. It's a lie. But it appears that within the 60s, which Thompson lived through and discusses in the book, young people in American culture really thought they were onto something, that they were getting somewhere, that it was all coming together. And then there's that lyric from the brilliant song by Jefferson Airplane, "When the truth is found to be lies, and all the joy within you dies. Don't you want somebody to..." It's an amazing song. It's like every generation thinks they've found the answer. And historically, it's quite clear that none of them have. And what follows the era of idealism is an era of bleak cynicism. Case in point, the 60s died with Charles Manson and the Sharon Tate murder, and the election of Richard Nixon, who's basically the arch nemesis of Hunter S. Thompson. Sort of the way people despised Trump today. He just absolutely hated Nixon. He thought that he just stood for everything that was wrong with America. Everything. And those events led into the 70s, one of the most gruesomely fascinating and abysmal eras of American history, which is when this book takes place. The foul year of our Lord, 1971. Now this is one of the greatest pieces in the book. So Thompson lived through the 60s. He saw the whole thing. It was amazing, and he saw the hope, right? is what we can gather from this book. He saw the hope that everybody had that that they were progressing, that things were going to be okay. Strange memories on this nervous night in Las Vegas. 5 years later, 6, it seems like a lifetime, or at least a main era, the kind of peak that never comes again. San Francisco in the middle 60s was a very special time and place to be a part of. Maybe it meant something, maybe not in the long run, but no explanation, no mix of words or music or memories can touch that sense of knowing that you were there and alive in that corner of time in the world, whatever it meant. History is hard to know because of all the hired bullshit, but even without being sure of history, it seems entirely reasonable to think that every now and then the energy of a whole generation comes to a head in a long, fine flash, for reasons that nobody really understands at the time, and which never explain, in retrospect, what actually happened. My central memory of that time seems to hang on 1 or 5 or maybe 40 nights, or very early mornings, when I left the Fillmore half crazy and instead of going home, aimed the big 650 Lightning across the Bay Bridge at 100 miles an hour wearing LL Bean shorts and a Butte sheepherder's jacket, booming through the Treasure Island Tunnel at the lights of Oakland and Berkeley and Richmond, not quite sure which turnoff to take when I got to the other end, always stalling at the toll gate, too twisted to find neutral while I fumbled for change, but being absolutely certain that no matter which way I went, I would come to a place where people were just as high and wild as I was. No doubt at all about that. There was madness in any direction at any hour, if not across the bay, then up the Golden Gate or down 101 to Los Altos or La Honda. You could strike sparks anywhere. There was a fantastic universal sense that whatever we were doing was right, that we were winning. And that, I think, was the handle, that sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in any mean or military sense. We didn't need that. Our energy would simply prevail. There was no point in fighting, on our side or theirs. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. So now, less than 5 years later, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west, and with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark, that place where the wave finally broke and rolled back. What the fuck are they going to say about this time that we're living through right now? Thompson is not one to shy away from risk. He spent time with the Hells Angels writing a book about his experiences with them. He's done all kinds of crazy shit. To develop his style, to teach himself how to write. When he was younger, Thompson would write out Hemingway, Faulkner, and Fitzgerald. That's actually a good tip for, God, I've been meaning to do that before, like actually write just rewrite the books of other people to get a feeling for how they structure a sentence. Ronald Duke is the character in Fear and Loathing. Hunter S. Thompson became incredibly popular and began to have this mythos built around him, which seemed to conflate and merge with his real character, to the point where he wasn't sure who people expected him to be, Duke or Thompson, while he was living his life, his normal life, where he had a wife and a kid, lived out in Colorado. In this interview, he said, "I'm really in the way as a person. The myth has taken over." Thompson's whole thing was about freedom, right? That was his whole thing. The freedom to live life on your own terms. He hated authority. And to live and die exactly how you choose, without any obstruction, without having to answer to anyone. That sounds kind of like the American dream. The idea of a constant progress, or at least a constant option to progress, right? The option to better yourself, and if you work hard, then things will get better. You shall progress if you actually put in the time. It's a lie. No, that's not how it works. Ultimately, most of us, if we want to eat, are forced to compromise, often in some miserable, stupid, boring way, shape, or form. Unless we possess the faculties necessary to entertain a crowd long enough to make it look like we're not compromising. But then heaven forbid you create an entertaining monster, or who you must portray for the rest of your life in order to keep up the image, right? In order to amuse the crowd. Heaven forbid you create a permanent alter ego that was never meant for anything close to sustainability. Otherwise, you might find yourself in a shitload of existential despair. And of course, that could have contributed to Hunter S. Thompson's decision to kill himself. But there are many other reasons too. He shot himself in 2005. One thing's for sure, none of us are getting out of this thing alive. And that dude went out with a bang on multiple levels. Not only shooting himself, but then having been shot into the sky in fireworks, thanks to his friend Johnny Depp, who plays him in the film adaptation. Hell of a send-off, perfectly appropriate. As your attorney, I advise you to listen to the audiobook in the description box below, featuring, and I can't fucking believe it, but I'm not kidding, Harry Dean Stanton as the narrator, and Jim Jarmusch as Ronald Duke. Also, please see the movie, the adaptation directed by Terry Gilliam. It's phenomenal. It's like Nick Tosha said about the Terry Gilliam film. It was one of those rare movies where the drug stuff seemed to be real. The drug and the booze stuff seemed to be real. And it does. It makes you feel gross. It makes you feel like disgusting, but also wildly entertained and disoriented. It's a real trip. You don't need to be high watching that film. You will be high. You know, it will be, and not in a pleasant way necessarily. And Benicio del Toro, who gained like, what, 40 or something pounds for that role. I mean, both of those guys knock it out of the fucking park. But Benicio del Toro was amazing. I thought he was excellent. Better Than Food, no doubt. Absolutely. One of the greatest, one of my favorite books of all time. Better Than Food. So who should read it? Well, if you enjoyed On the Road by Jack Kerouac, I think that's the closest comparison I can get to as far as like the speed factor. You just dive in and man, you are fucking going and it does not stop and it's amazing. It would also pair well with Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem if you're into the whole death of the 60s ideal vibe. And then, you know, yeah, people who were inspired by him. Anthony Bourdain, Nick Tosches, yeah, definitely. All right, time for the Coffee Lottery. For those of you who are new, the Coffee Lottery is where I take all the names of the patrons on Patreon who have donated $5 or more per video to the show, and I place their names in this mason jar, and I pull out a name for every single review I do, and whoever's name I pull out, I send them a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious, and I have people vouching for me. It's official. So, if you donate $1 or more to the show, you can get access to the patron-only reviews and the Better Than Friday newsletter, which I'm going to send out today, as a matter of fact. It is Friday when I'm recording this, and I must finish that. And that's just a list of 5 different things every week that I send out to patrons. Just things that I'm interested in. Could be books in the pipeline, films, articles, music. Changes week to week. If you'd like to get in on that, you can head over to patreon.com/booksofbetterthanfood, $5 or more for the Coffee Lottery entry, and then $1 or more will get you access to the patron-only reviews and the Better Than Friday newsletter. Unfortunately, international shipping is not included. Sorry about that. Thank you very much to all the patrons who have supported the show, and thank you very much for staying on board throughout this period. This is unreal, but I feel extremely fortunate as most people have stuck around, and it means so much to me. I'm going to try and get these reviews out as soon as possible. There's going to be a lot to come, and yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful. So thank you, and best of luck to you all. All right, here we go. Josh Wash 20. Thank you very much, Josh Wash 20. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly, from Brazil. I should probably stop talking now. All right, thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Always remember what Hunter S. Thompson said. Don't take any guff from these swine. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please hit the thumbs up if you enjoy this, and share this with your friends who you know would love this book. Stay at home, stay safe, have a good night. Talk to you soon. Ciao.